What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, back some more Elder Scrolls Legends, and today we're going to be talking about, we recently got an article today about changes that are coming to the game, I believe this week, so it should be any day now, about card changes, nerfs, and buffs that are coming to the game. So I decided, in place of a normal gameplay video today, why not spend some time talking about these changes, what I think about them. Not everything super complicated, but it'll still be something good to talk about, I think. So let's get started. We're going to go from the top down. We're going to start with the buffs. So the first buff is to Temple Conjurer for a 2-cost 2/2. He's staying the same cost and stat-wise, but his Exalt cost is being dropped down to a 3. I think that's pretty significant. Still as a 2-cost 2/2, he's kind of underwhelming, especially considering most of the cards in Legends that are some of the best cards in the game are 2-drops, so this doesn't really compete as a 2-drop. However, a normal Flame Atronach is a 4-cost creature. It's not really a feel-good 4-cost creature, but it's an okay 4-cost creature. But now, using the Exalt ability, you're actually getting a 1 Magicka discount on that Flame Atronach, so they're buffing it from Exalt 4 to Exalt 3. And normally, I think they wanted Exalt to be kind of even-costed. You don't really get a benefit because you're paying for flexibility. But when you're having a bad 2-drop, and then you pay exactly 4 to get a bad 4-drop, it's kind of like, why would I really do that when I can run, like, Wardcrafter instead or something like that? So now I think Temple Conjurer, I don't think... We'll get to my thoughts on Exalt in a minute, but I don't think Exalt as a whole changes too much as a result of this card. But I think this card becomes more playable because of that. Now you can say, on turn 5, I can get a 2/2 out and a 5/3 out. So I'm getting a total of 7/5 stats out, 4/5 Magicka. And the only 2 cards in the game at the moment that I believe do that is Torval Extortionist and Blood Dragon. And you're doing this across 2 bodies, so if you have Divine Fervor or something out, obviously it's even better. So I think this card is... Before it was on the fringe of playability, I think now this is something that you could strongly consider putting in your decks. Let's move on to the next card. Also an Exalt card, we got Enamor's Keeper. 3-cost 4/3, staying the same, but the Exalt cost, just like Temple Conjurer, is dropping down to 4. So, Heirloom Greatsword is a 5-cost weapon, I think? I think it's actually a 6-cost weapon. So typically, it's either 5 or 6 costs, I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a +5/+0, and you return it to your hand when the creature dies that has it equipped. So, Enamor's Keeper, I don't think the cost is what was preventing Enamor's Keeper from being good. Getting a cheaper Heirloom Greatsword obviously is solid, and you still may consider running this card now if you need that last bit of reach at the end of the game. But I think the biggest problem, and I've seen this buff suggested online before, is Enamor's Keeper has to equip it to himself. So you can't use this as, for example, a turn 8 Savage Ogre, more or less. You can't equip it onto a creature that's on the board ready to attack and push for that extra 5 damage right off the bat. You have to put it onto Enamor's Keeper, and then either have him die and get the sword back, or what have you. So I think this buff is less impactful. Obviously, anytime a thing gets buffed, it becomes more playable for the most part. I just don't think Enamor's Keeper has been buffed enough to really matter. Maybe you can consider running this as a 1-of or 2-of in some item-focused deck. I don't know, but having to play this, exalt it, kill it, hope it doesn't get silenced just to get the sword out in the end, why not just play the Heirloom Greatsword on its own? And then playing it as a 3-cost 4/3. Not horrible, but I don't think the payoff in the end is as worth it. I still think you can consider running this card, but I don't think this card got as much better as Temple Conjurer did. Let's talk about the next card now. We've got Temple Patriarch getting another buff as well, going from 7-cost to 6-cost. I think this one is much more important. This is kind of the card that makes Exalt tempting. Triggering the Exalt of all of your friendly creatures on a stick is obviously an incredible ability. So this is being 1 Magicka cheaper obviously makes it a lot better. But again, I don't think the cost of Temple Patriarch was ever really the problem. I think the problem was Exalt creatures not being good enough to play without their Exalt abilities usually. And then there's no Exalt creatures on the board when you play Temple Patriarch, if you even find it. Because he's a 3 and 75, and then when you have Temple Patriarch coming down onto the board, ideally you want to have at least 2 or 3 Exalt creatures on the board. Even if they're already exalted, the Exalt will trigger again. But you need 2 or 3 Exalt creatures on the board in order for Temple Patriarch to matter. So maybe him coming down 1 turn earlier could mean that those creatures survive a little bit better, but I'm not completely sold on that. Like I said, I don't think the cost was the issue with this card. I think maybe consistency of drawing this card in Tribunal was part of the issue, and I think the other part of the issue was just having enough of an Exalt board for him to matter. Obviously, him coming down a turn earlier, maybe you can find ways to keep your cards alive a little bit better. It's worth experimenting with. Obviously, this card got a lot better, and now you can have that gigantic potential swing 1 turn earlier, which could matter for Exalt decks. I don't know. I'm still not completely sold. The 3 buffs over there have me wanting to try it, though. So I guess that's a good thing at the end of the day. Now we're going to get into some nerfs. I don't know. Let's just get into the nerfs and we'll talk about them. So first one that's going down is Ash Berserker. He's going from a 4-cost 4/3 to a 4-cost 3/3. And if you read the dev notes down here, it's mostly because of self-activation. Some of the cards they mentioned, 5th Legion Trainer, or Clan Captain, Steel Dagger, Divine Fervor, literally whatever, Ash Berserker can come onto the board and, a lot of the time, just trigger himself. That means, I think Ash Berserker was designed as a card that, if you have strong creatures on the board, Ash Berserker kind of amplifies your position and allows you to keep refilling your hand. But with him triggering himself, you don't really need to have that board. There's no risk to playing this card, because essentially you play him, you draw a card, he winds up like a 4-cost 4/3 replace yourself, and if it doesn't get immediately answered, it just continues to snowball the game. So I can see the logic behind this change. 3/3 means that you can't self-trigger with most of the most common ways of buffing your creature's attacks in these aggro decks. A Steel Scimitar or something like that will still trigger Ash Berserker, but those are less ubiquitous as the ones mentioned down below, 5th Legion Trainer, Clan Captain, Steel Dagger, stuff like that. So I think this is a solid change. Ash Berserker is still really, really good. I just don't think that it is a insta-include in aggro to mid-range red decks like it's been. Now you have to make sure your deck can really pump this guy up or have the creatures on board to take advantage of his ability, rather than just slam this in the deck and trust that when the time comes there'll be a 5-creature attack on the board, because worst case scenario it can trigger itself. So I like that. It makes you have to think about running the card instead of just automatically running it. I think this is a solid change. I don't think it kills the card, it just, you'll see it a lot less because it's going to be less of an auto-include. Next nerf, this is a big one, I think. Goblin Skulk, going from a 2-cost 2/2 to a 3-cost 2/3. I think people have been really coming around on Skulk just being one of the best cards in the game, and being one of the, if you don't insta-answer this card, you lose kind of card. I think it really got amplified. It's been here in the past. So back when Action Assassin was kind of a thing, this was pulling lesser wards and curses for your Coastal Tower Crafter. Then moving forward, you know, your mid-assassins and even mid-monks were pulling curses. Now we're kind of at the point where you're pulling Firebrands and Cruel Fireblooms, and all of those zero-cost cards are solid. And I think it's been amplified the most in the current Telvanni iterations of how much Skulk pulling Firebloom not only thins their deck and helps them find their conscription easier, or find their other answers easier, but it allows them to use their Tree Minders and their Blackhand Messengers as deal 5 damage to an opponent card. So these little bodies that you don't care about killing off anyway, now we're creating these gigantic tempo swings, because usually Cruel Firebloom is supposed to be a bit of a tempo loss. You're sacrificing your own card, your own tempo, to kill an opposing creature. It's kind of, I don't want to say quite a desperation play, but something along those lines. But Telvanni was really able to use Firebloom as almost like an aggressive or a proactive play, slightly reactive, but more of a, I'm going to come at you with my Firebloom, and they didn't really lose anything in the process. And you could have made an argument to nerf Fire Bloom, but I think the developers made a correct decision here in identifying that what's the common thread here across all of these months and all of these years at this point of these decks, and it's been Skulk pulling those zero-cost cards. Skulk is still solid if you want to pull zero-cost cards from your deck, but now, again, just like Ash Berserker, I don't think you just slap in zero-cost cards in a Skulk now and expect to ring out Skulk on turn 2 and just snowball the game in your favor. I don't think that's a realistic option anymore. It's still a really good card if you have synergy with these zero-cost cards. Market decks are going to run it. I still think Telvanni will run it. But now you have to deal with the possibility of, if your Skulk gets executed on turn 2 or 3, are you okay with coming back from that? And does the risk outweigh the reward, or vice versa? Also, I like that they bumped it to 3 health. If you're going to make this card cost 3, you can't have a 3 cost that just dies to Firebolt without doing anything. Or dies to Sorcerer's Negation. Makes it a little bit more resilient. It still isn't going to be like a board fighter. Like, you're not going to drop this 3 cost 2/3 and expect to really be trading with many things. But it can trade with most 2-drops, and it still has a really good ability. So Skulk is still a really good card. Again, you're going to hear me say this about a lot of the changes. It's not going to just instantly, you know, be shoved into every deck anymore. This next one was a bit of a surprise, but I can understand their argument behind it. The next nerf is to Genius Pathmage. It's going from 6 cost to 7 cost. I think they said the biggest reasoning behind this change was A, Nixox combo is almost automatic just by pulling Pathmage on 13, I think it was. I don't know the exact combo, but it was something along those lines. So it was partially to nerf Nixox combo, but also it was to make it more difficult, like they said, to chain Pathmage, because if Pathmage was one of your only 6-drops, you could get lucky and for 6 play triple Pathmage into Fate Weaver or whatever other 6-drop you have, and that's a 6 cost. You're getting 15 worth of stats and draw a card, so that's a little crazy. It's kind of like its own mini conscription. So I can see the thought process behind nerfing Genius Pathmage. It wasn't on my radar, but I also don't disagree with their reasoning. And again, it makes the Nixox combo less consistent and less easy, so I'm fine with that. It doesn't kill Nixox combo, it just makes it less automatic. Fine by me. And the final one, the boogeyman in the room, and honestly, the only change out of this entire list that I disagree with is Telvanni's Conscription. It's going from an 11 cost card to a 12 cost card. I think that changes almost nothing. I'll try and play devil's advocate for a bit. Going from 11 to 12 in most situations buys you an extra turn to finish off your conscription opponent. Does that matter a lot of the time? I guess it could, assuming that the rest of the game went in such a way that you could realistically continue to push this damage. I don't think the cost was ever the problem with Conscription. I don't think anyone was ever saying Conscription came out too soon. My issue has always been the insane power swing. Even for 12 Magicka, drawing 8 cards, playing 8 cards, playing 8 card summon ability, and thinning your deck by 8 cards, and, you know, shackling and then drawing cards from those 8 cards, and then all the other crazy things that happen. That one Magicka doesn't make the difference for that. I think the card is still incredible. Now, I guess, again, if I'm trying to play devil's advocate, you can say potentially with the nerf to Skulk, the biggest offender of Conscription being Telvanni, maybe doesn't find those Fire Blooms and they can't ward off their more aggressive opponents as easily, so that maybe Telvanni's Conscription being a turn or a turn later can matter more because you're going to have more stuff stick onto the board since they don't have those Fire Bloom swings constantly happening. And yes, maybe I can see the thought process there, and I'm not going to fault you if you feel that way. I could see it, and maybe that winds up being the thing. And if it is, okay, I will gladly be wrong about that. But I don't know. I don't feel like this is enough. I feel like this does almost nothing to those decks. And I don't think that if you're thinking about Parthenax versus Conscription, you're ever going to choose Parthenax. You can run 3 Conscriptions, and Conscription will help you find your other late game cards that you're playing, or whatever have you. I don't know. This one doesn't feel great to me. All the other ones I am completely in agreement with, and I can see the logic and see the reasoning. And I can see the thought process behind this one. I just think this one was the most poorly executed. I think this card is going to almost be unchanged. I think all of the same decks that are running it are still going to run it. I even would have, I think, preferred them trying to mess with other components of Telvanni, whether it be Odonarin or... this isn't a nerf that they would make, but the ability of 3-color houses to run 2-color cards. I wouldn't mind seeing those changes, but that's obviously not going to be a thing that happens in a balance patch. I don't know. I feel like Conscription is still going to be a problem, be a thorn in our sides, but I'm hoping I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Those are the changes. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section of the buffs and the nerfs. Did they do enough? Did they not do enough? Did they do too much? I don't know. Let me know down below in the comment section. I'm excited to see how this works, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.